right, let's talk to John in California. John, you're on the air with V and Dave. How can we help you today?
Hi, V. Hi, Dave. Hey,
John.
I have a question. So, I married my wife about 10 years ago, and I was raised in a church, the Church of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
I about 5 years ago, I started looking at it and felt no good reason to believe anymore, and deconverted into an atheist. My wife, however, when she married me, saw me as, I was raised and born in the church, and I was, I was a pretty Bible thumping person. And she wasn't, however. She was and still is very spiritual, tarot cards sort of deal. Everything happens for a reason. And I feel like I catfished her a little bit. She mentioned the other day that, I'm no longer the person that she married sort of deal. I don't have the same beliefs as I do. So I was wondering if you had anything to say to that, or how to make the so we have one child as well. Asking these questions. I have parents that are still, they're still Christian, and, they talk about God, and he's 6 years old, and he looked at him and said, I don't believe in God, sort of deal. And because, we talk about those things. Those are just something that, people, everyone has their beliefs, and, whether or not he sees it or has good evidence for it, that's what we kind of, that's what we look for. I want him to be a critical thinker. So,
damn, there's a lot to unpack here. First request for you though, John, do you have the show on in the background by any chance?
I do not.
Okay, we're getting a little bit of an echo, but it seems to be fine now. So we'll just cross our fingers and hope. So thank you for checking. I know I've got thoughts on this. Dave, though, I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, that's a tough one, John. I experienced much of the same. I'll just kind of refer to my experience with that, because I was into this a lot longer than you were. I was an evangelical Christian for 3.5 decades, and married my wife, had kids in it, and lived in that culture for the better part of my adult life. And when I deconstructed about 10 years ago and realized I no longer believed it, my wife remained a Christian, and my 2 of my 3 kids did, as well as my brother, sister, mom, the whole thing. I was clearly the black sheep. And it was tough, because I stayed married in that scenario for another 4 or 5 or 6 years as an atheist living with a Christian, and it became more and more difficult and more problematic for me. She was content to remain in the marriage with me. I was not content to stay married to someone who continued to embrace things that I had more and more problems with. The very things that you're talking about, how we teach kids, or how we indoctrinate kids at a young age with things that are just not true. We don't teach them how to think, we teach them what to think. We consider a vast majority of the world population to be wrong and destined for hell. All those, I could go on and on about evangelicalism and the problems I have with it. So for me to stay married in that scenario was not going to be sustainable for me. And so I ended the marriage, and I knew that it would cause a lot of pain and heartache on a lot of people. But for me personally, it was the only thing that I could do to be honest and authentic with myself. And I'm not saying that's what you should do by any means, but I completely understand the difficult position that you're now in. And like you said, it wasn't your wife that changed, it was you. And the same for me. I would push back against the idea that you catfished her. I know you were saying it a little bit in jest, but the reality is you were doing the best you could at the time. And you were honest about your thoughts and beliefs and who you were. You didn't come into it with any sense of deception or anything other than, this is who I am. And then you changed. And I want to say, first of all, that takes courage to admit you were wrong about something and to say, wait a minute, this isn't adding up for me and I'm going to have to reassess this. That's not a small thing. And you should understand that for you to be able to do that, even though it's going to cost you a lot socially and emotionally and relationally, it still was for you at that time the right thing to do. So do not beat yourself up about that. You were doing the best you could do. And like Maya, go ahead.
One thing I'm a little lucky about is even when I was Christian, I didn't really feel that teaching kids at a young age. And I always, I thought about raising my son and how if it was actually true that there'd be no reason to have to teach him as a baby that these are those things that, when he gets to be a grown adult and have his own, his own morality, his own, his own view of the world. If it is true, then he'll figure out what is true.
Exactly.
So indoctrinating him was never something, and luckily my wife doesn't feel like we should be indoctrinating him on anything.
Exactly.
So
Good.
I am lucky in that aspect.
That sounds.
What are your thoughts, B?
Well, honestly, anything that I say is probably going to pale in comparison, Dave. That was beautifully put. I think I would also kind of focus in on that catfish concept and the idea that you're not the same person you were when I married you. Of course you're not, right? That's part of the deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reason that, or one of the reasons that people get married is to say, hey, I know you're going to change and I'm here for it. Right. I acknowledge that you are going to shift as a human and grow and find new things to be excited about. And I want to be there. And that's wonderful. And we talk about this a lot on my other show, Secular Sexuality, in ways around, sexual identity or gender identity or relationship styles. Sometimes people will get into relationships and realize, oh, wait, I'm someone different now. And this could be a problem for the relationship. And what we tell people in these instances are, you know what, you need to be honest, you need to be true to yourself and make sure you aren't hiding who you are to make someone else comfortable, because that's just going to fester, right? That's not something that's sustainable for either person. And try and work it out if you feel that that's the direction you want to go. And it's going to be hard, right? It's not going to be an easy thing. But if you are both dedicated to this idea of sticking it out, then it's worth that fight. So I would say definitely do not guilt yourself for changing, whether, that's something that is being told to you or you're telling yourself. It's not helpful because everybody does that all the time. And then the next step, of course, is just, now what, right? Is this something that is a deal breaker? And if so, how do you navigate that, And if it's not a deal breaker, then awesome. You guys get new conversations to have. You guys get a new perspective to share and to, play off of each other. So it's not always a bad thing by any means. In fact, often it can reinvigorate and uncover a lot of extra stuff that might not have been said otherwise. So I don't know. I guess my last question for you is, do you want to stick this out? And does your wife?
Well, I know I do. And the reason why I feel catfished is because of her comment of me not being the same person that she married. And it has kind of driven different conversations. I think she feels like I'm a lot more cynical now because I question a lot more of, things that are people see but aren't proven. I actually ask for evidence when it comes to certain claims.
Imagine that.
Of course, there's a crazy creature in our kitchen that's a black shadow. It was just I took that as like, those things, spirits and demons and those things are real. And now it's like I want more evidence, and it is very much in her eyes seems a bit more cynical.
Yeah, and I can see that. I think I think I'm going to pull a page from Eric's book for a minute, not the actual book of Eric, because he'd be mad at me if I did that. And say a lot of the time when people get out of a religious mindset or a spiritual mindset, it sounds like in this case, and start questioning things and start moving in a new direction, the person who is still where they were originally, the person in the religion and that spiritual mindset, might see that as, you know, something against them, right? I don't want to be involved with you anymore, or I think that you're stupid, or I think that you don't have the necessary brain power or willpower to leave, right? And that's certainly not something that it sounds like you're saying, but that can often be what other people hear because of the negative stereotype around skeptics and around atheism. So one thing that you might want to consider doing is, if your questions feel like attacks and you're not intending that, then maybe actually talking about that and saying, hey, you know, when I ask you this question, how do you know? That's not me saying you're wrong. That's not me saying that I think you're stupid. This is me saying, hey, let's talk about this, right? I have questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you've been able to do that? Do you feel like you've been able to do that with her, John, in a way that's
argument?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes it opens up to going, oh yeah, you know, maybe we should think about that a little bit more, see what that is, you know. But it's just constantly being surrounded, you know, and she's surrounded by people who are like-minded as well, who, you know, have tarot cards, and you know, they see spirits and demons, and everyone has an aura sort of deal, and and so I kind of have to find myself sitting alone going, oh, all right, yeah, can I see some proof? Like, is there anything you can tell me that is evidence for it? And, you know, I just get kind of shoved in a corner going, okay, well, he's just, you know, he's skeptic.
Just put him. Yeah, we don't need to worry about that. Yeah, I think one last thing to maybe suggest here is, it sounds like, and of course it's hard with COVID, right? It's hard with everything shut down, but it sounds like you might need friends who are skeptical, right? You might need friends to build up that side of things. It feels very lopsided right now. If it's your wife and your entire social circle that is talking in this way, of course you're going to feel like the odd man out. Of course there's going to be that extra set of tension. But if what you're worried about right now is maintaining that relationship with your wife, then a good next step could be building a social network and a structure for you, a community that you can go to and you can find solace in, so that it doesn't have to be you pitted against everyone else in her life. You can have your separate groups, your separate conversations, and hopefully come back together and continue these important conversations about what is real and what she believes and why.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
Yeah. Well, I hope you guys find some common ground and work it through. And main thing is, I think what V and I would both say to you is, be true to yourself, and make sure you're in a situation where you can be your best authentic self and not have to compromise that to placate someone else. And if you can do that, and you feel like you're grounded in that, and she's comfortable with that, and you guys can maintain a relationship with these separate ideologies, then all the power to you. That's hard to do, but it can be done. And I know people who've done it. So
yeah, me too.
Hopefully that'll be the case.
We'll end up sticking it out. I think if anything, it'll give the boy a little bit more well-roundedness when it comes to, like, there's certain beliefs, and then, you know, criticize those beliefs if they're not warranted in evidence. And, you know, Daddy believes one thing or doesn't believe one thing, and Mama believes the other. So
make up your own mind, right? And just critical thinking. You're on the right track there. That's well done.
Absolutely. Thank you for calling in, John. I really hope we were able to help out a little bit. And if you are looking for that community, I suggest going to our Facebook page or our Discord. We have some really amazing groups of people there, many of whom have been through similar struggles. They're the first person in their family to deconvert. And they're kind of wondering what to do next. So you will find some really awesome community there as well.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate you both. Enjoy your day.
Thanks, John.
Absolutely. You too. Oh, that's rough.
That is tough. I've seen it. You've seen it too. I've seen it so many times, and every situation's different, and there's no blanket answer to how to deal with these things. It's just tough. And when one person, I mean, the reality is, and you touched on it, people change, and we should be changing. If we're not changing, we're not growing. And ideally, in a relationship, people change in sync with each other, and you're able to maintain that relationship as you go through life. But oftentimes, you don't change in the same way, and it's not anybody's fault. That's the thing we got to help people see. It's not your fault that you changed your mind about some things. It's not that it doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make the other person bad for not changing. So it just happens. And so how do we navigate that? How do we deal with that? And every situation's different, but man, it can be tough. It can be tough. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, that's been my experience. Not romantically, thankfully. That would be awkward. But in my family, my family is 50 plus people, like extended family, all of whom are very close, and I'm the only atheist, or the only out atheist, at least. So it can be. Yep, there you go. Solidarity. It can be very isolating, and those extra communities that you build on your own, those found families, are important so that you can build that there and then take that strength to these conversations with people who would disagree with you.
Yeah, it's gotten easier to find that community now than it was 10 years ago when I came out.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's Recovering from Religion. We just did the fundraiser for them the other day, and so yeah, it's out there. You just got to search for it a little bit.